my name is Robert Marquez, and today I'm going to demonstrate creating a UML sequence diagram using Enterprise Architect. I'll begin from the File menu, selecting New Project. When the model wizard appears, I'll cancel, and from View, select select the project browser. And with the model selected, I'll move to the top and click on New Package. I'll call it MDIS, which is my application. Then I'll right-click on that node and select Add Diagram. And I'll give this diagram a name. So this will be about submitting a request for a mobile device. With UML Behavioral selected on the left, on the right I'll have Sequence selected, then click OK. I now have a Submit Request for Mobile Device on the right. It's a tab area where it will be built. And what I need now is my toolbox, which is under the Diagram menu, Toolbox. I'm going to begin by taking an actor from the toolbox and placing it here, and I will call this one an employee. So these actor symbols here are for things that are outside the system. So I have an employee, and I'm also going to have a manager who has a small role. I'm going to bring in a lifeline. This is for an application. Application is called MDIS. So my actor characters here will be interacting with this system. And I need another lifeline because my systems interact with other systems. So the MDIS application is going to interact with a web service as well. I'm going to float my tab area here to get more room. And also we'll have a database server to work with, so that's another lifeline. Starting with the employee, I'm going to click this upward arrow you'll see here. This is how I'm going to start my messages. I'll click on it and drag it right all the way to the MDIS lifeline. And here I will double click on the line itself and define this message as it's a request for mobile device list. So the employee is requesting for a mobile device list from the MDIS application. I'll click on the MDIS lifeline, and here's this upper arrow again. I will click this and drag it right to the next item to communicate with, which is a web service. I'll let go after dragging it, and click on the line again and state request mobile device list. So I'm repeating this message because the application needs to go through a web service to get to the database for this application. Clicking on the lifeline again, and you may have noticed that this basically it's like a step, it's stepping down. So as I drag this, I'm going to want to drag this to the right, but it's lowered again, lower than the previous one. This is the way things progress in a sequence diagram. Moving forward, things move downward. So I've moved down, and I'm going to repeat the same message here, which is request mobile device list. It's finally reached the database server. The database server will do the actual work. So I'm going to click on the database server Lifeline and click this arrow again and bring it to itself. So I'm going to let it go right on the database server Lifeline. So it's returning to itself. And I'll double click on this line. And I'm going to change the message, which is now get mobile device list. This is what the database is doing. And after it's done that, we need to return the mobile device list. So I'm going to click in the Lifeline again for the database server. Drag this upward arrow here, this time left, to the web service. Now we'll call this, it's going to be a return. And this time under return value, it will be a mobile device list. Notice how the line is now dotted. And you may have noticed the automatic numbering sequence that helps to show the order of these steps taking place. And we want this return to indicate that it's a result of this activity here. So there are some arrows here you'll see. If I clicked on it, this block has been extended now to include this return message. So it's part of this effort from the database server getting the device list. The ball is now in the court of the web service. So I'm going to click on the web service Lifeline and drag the message out to the left again. And you want to let go below. Don't let go above, let go below. And again, we are repeating this message. What we have is a mobile device list that is going back, and I'm going to select return. And one more time. Actually, no, we're at the destination point now, which is the application. Actually, from here, we want to take this all the way back to the employee. So I'm going to click on the Lifeline for the application and drag this message all the way out to the employee. And again, what we have is a mobile device list. Now that it's here, we want the employee to look at that list. So I'm going to click into the employee actor component here and click this arrow and make it come into itself. And we're going to label this as, gotta click on the arrow itself. And we're going to say review mobile device list. So the employee is now reviewing the list. I can see I'm going to need a little more room here. Drag this down. Next, I'm going to have the employee make a selection. So he's reviewing the list and now coming back to himself again. We're going to say select a device. And I want to make this transaction look like it's part of this one, so I'll click this small arrow here to bring them together. Now we know they're connected. And I'm going to click into the employee actor again and one more time into itself and say the next logical step, which is after he's selected a device, I'm going to now submit a request. And we have a parameter here. In the parameter, I'm going to put a mobile device request. This is what we're moving along the path. And okay, let's see, select, submit. This arrow really should be going this way. There. And we need to make it connected to this activity, so I'm going to click this arrow which brought them there. So we'll scroll up just a little. We're dealing with the MDIS application, so I'm going to click in its lifeline and draw an arrow onto itself to show what it will do now that it received this message. And I'm going to state that it's going to do some validation here. So, validate input data. And the parameter for that would be a mobile device request. So now the MDIS application is doing some validation, and depending on the results of that validation, we may end up going right, which would be to route request to the containing route request. The parameter would be a mobile device request. And I'm going to make a little more room here again. It's kind of closing in a little. Crossing the line here, so I need a larger space on my paper. I typically, when I'm running out of room, will move up to a ledger size. So on my page size, from letter to ledger, that'll give me a lot of room. Validate input data, and if everything goes well, it should be routed to the web service, but it might not go well, so it might have to go back to the employee. So what I'm going to do here is bring in something from the toolbox called a fragment. And with this, we can put a conditional. So I'm going to say, for example, input, let's see here, validation, no, I think I'll put input data equals valid. Put a save, and then there will be an else. Click OK. Make some room down here to separate. In this block is where I want the positive to move right. Down below would be to do a different direction. So let's try to position this in here. And I want to move this a little more. So you can see if the input data is valid, we're going to proceed the route to the web service. If not, something else is going on here. So I'm going to bring in another fragment. And this time I'm going to create a loop. So this drop down here has a loop. And conditional here, I'm going to say until input data equals valid. Alright, input data is over here. So I'll move this. I'm going to overlap this just around here and bring it down. See how we look. So what we're saying is that when we submit a request, we're in this loop until the input data is valid. So first time around, we're doing some validation. There's the check. Is the input data equal to valid? And if it is, we'll leave this loop and this conditional and move to the web service. If not, the else does nothing, but we're in this loop, so it will repeat back again and resubmit. So the user has to submit until the data is valid. Going to make a little bit more room here again. So moving on with the route, we've begun this task of routing the mobile device request from the web service. Once it reaches there, we're going to send it off to the database server. So that's a route request. Parameter, we're carrying a mobile device request. And once we get here to the database server is going to do some work. So I drew the line back onto itself. And what the database server is doing is insert into employee manager's approval queue. And once the request has been entered into the manager's approval queue, we're going to want to communicate the result back. So I'm clicking on the Lifeline for database server again, dragging this upward arrow and bringing it back to the web service, where I'll relabel the line again to say result of route request. Since this is what we're really returning back, I'm going to actually put that in the return value. And I'll click return on this again. And we want this return to look like it came as a result from the database's effort. So we're going to click this arrow, extend down the bar. What's kind of nice working in this is that as I move up and down, the Lifeline titles remain in position, so I know where I'm at, which column I'm dealing with. So I'm going to go to the web service Lifeline and bring a message back to the application MDIS. I'm going to say result of route request. Yes, return value. Alright, the ball's back in the applications court again. So I'm going to click on the application MDIS Lifeline and bring it back into itself, because it's going to do something, which is, if I can click on it, display result, something for the user to see. Going to stretch down these lifelines a little more. And now, the next step, I'm going to bring the event back into itself and say build email notification. And once we've done that, I'm going to send one email note out to the employee. And we'll send another one out to the manager. So the result of building the email, from here we send one out to the employee and one out to the manager so he can look at his work queue and approve the request. So I'm going to back out now and take a wider look at what we have. Oh, that gets pretty small. All right, well, here's the top. And, well, let's make this little. Okay. And here's the bottom half. So that will do it for this demonstration of creating a sequence diagram using Enterprise Architect. Thank you for watching.